So coming up to the tent, the setup. Oh, there's Steven. Steven's always watching. So this stove is doing... What is going on, guys? I got another behind the scenes sneak peek for you. Right now I'm in a snowstorm filming a video for my other channel, link in the description. I did bring the van with me, which is blending in, almost camouflage in this snowstorm. Boomer's out here wandering around doing his thing. It has already snowed like 6 inches. I've got this brand new gigantic hot tent from Pomali and a brand new wood stove from Pomali. Looking at it right now, just pumping the heat in that tent. This is a giant 8-person tent. I'm out here in the middle of nowheres, I will mention that. Absolute nowheres with a 2-wheel drive van during a snowstorm. Not very smart, but you know what? I needed the extra room. So take a look at this tent. All right, coming over to the tent, and I mean, first of all, look at this beautiful area. My tracks that I drove in on are almost totally snowed in. Beautiful out here. So coming up to the tent, the door, yes, the door's wide open. And you guys can see, even still, all of this slush, the amount of heat that that wood stove is pumping out is absurd, and I love it. So just sitting down for coffee right now. Here's the beast. Now this thing has not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 doors. Yes, 4 doors. You could put this centrally in a teepee style hot tent and basically have 4 ways, or you could literally go all the way around the stove 360 degrees and open a door and feed it. Also, this is really great because today I'm using these compressed logs. These are just basically compressed, no glue, no chemicals. They're just pressure binds this together. And it's a mix of wood and sawdust and bark from the tree. But those expand as they burn. And what happens sometimes is they actually land on the glass door to some of these similar stoves. And it prevents you from opening the door until it's totally burned down, which you lose all of your heat inside of your tent by doing that, or your cabin or whatever you're burning this in. So this way, if it does pile up on this door, I can go over to the other 3 doors and continue loading the stove without worrying about it falling out and melting the floor. Today I don't have a floor, but you kind of get the idea, guys. Boomer, you coming in now? Yeah? Face looks a little snowy there, bud. Yeah? You should shake it off. There you go. You going up on the bed? Over here. Up. Good boy. Good boy. You got snow on your nose. So, yeah, pretty awesome setup. Oh, there's Steven. Steven's always watching. Interesting, guys. I just cleared this tent off, and you guys can see it's already getting covered in snow again. I just did it 5 minutes ago. It is like steady snowing out there. So here I am in a house in a house tent. Essentially, this thing is massive. Even with the door open, sitting right in front of the wood stove, I was actually kind of worried that the stove being up so high wasn't going to be able to heat around the tent because heat rises, obviously. So I like my stoves down as low as possible. Now, I could have done that today. I could have just took it off the stand. But I figure, you know what? With all that glass transmitting a lot of thermal value out 360 degrees, and it's a large stove, it's actually doing a really good job. The door is still open, and I can feel the heat over by the bed. It's actually really comfortable. Watching the snow fall out here is beautiful. Just kicking back right now, enjoying a coffee. So I'm going to do a little bit of testing with this. Obviously later on I'm going to shut the door and figure that out. But I'll let you guys know here on this channel how it works. This is the first time burning this wood stove. I am going to be burning real wood other than these compressed logs. I just have to go and get it in the woods, obviously. So I'll let you guys know what I think about the wood stove and the tent combination, and then, you know, a little bit of either or. What do I think about just the stove? What do I think about just the tent? Yeah, so fun day out in the snow. It might actually be 2 or 3 days, depending if I get stuck or not. And that's kind of the reason why I brought the van. I know that sounds silly, like, well, if you brought the Jeep, you wouldn't get stuck. I've been having problems with the Jeep. Trust me, right now the van is more reliable. Let's just leave it at that. But if I do get stuck out here, I have enough food, power, blankets, clothing, determination, skill, experience to last out here for, like 2 weeks, no problem. 2 weeks, I've got enough food in the van to comfortably eat for 2 weeks. No worries there. So yeah, I'm going to get back to filming my other video and enjoy the snow on the tent. The snow's hitting the tent so hard that it actually feels like rain, or sounds like rain, but it's not. It's tap, 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 tap. The snow. I'm going to have to bang this tent off in a moment. The snow really makes it dark in here, so it's difficult to film. So I've been going around whacking it off. Yeah, get all this snow off of there and be able to see. So yeah, stick around. Give you guys a view of the stove. Nice little close-up here, just before I go whack it off. Alright, so it is evening time now. I don't know if you guys can make out, but we've got a bit of some purple and pink and stuff happening up in the sky right now. So a little bit of a sunset. That tells me that the clouds are very, very thin up there. And it might not snow anymore. Who knows? But just coming inside of the tent, I am just finishing up with my dinner. Boomer's been eating all day, but I do have a steak that I'm cooking for him right now. And yeah, I'll tell you guys, this stove is absolutely awesome. So burning the real wood, the softwood that I put in there, is burning really, really well. These logs, since I've been here, I've only gone through how many? There's 4 in a pack. I have half of one left. I literally just loaded the other half. So I've only burned 3 of those logs the entire day. So we're talking like 8, 9, 10 hours. And out of the softwood, I've only burned like 4 or 5 pieces. So this stove is doing incredibly well. I will mention it is wide open right now. You guys can see the little damper up there on the pipe is wide open. And while we're talking about the stove, I'll show you down here there are vents. I can't touch that with my bare hand, but there's a little screw that shuts it. There's one on this side of the stove and there's one on the back side of the stove. And then every single door also has, if you guys can make out these little holes here, there's a screw that slides and shuts that as well. So there are vents on the top of every single door. You guys can see it a little bit better in this shot actually right there. So close that one, open it. So what that does is it pulls the smoke down off the glass. So you can see this window is very, very, very clean, other than where there's wood touching it. So this is a good example. If I were to open this door right now, that hot ash would actually fall out onto the ground or onto the floor of a tent if I had one. This side is a little bit more fouled because there was a lot of stuff on this glass. It's now burned off. But you guys can see the little pattern there where the air's coming in, drawing the smoke off the window, which is keeping it clean. And over here, kind of the same thing. So I have this stove wide open right now, and it is burning really, really well. The interesting thing is, if I shut the 2 side vents down on the sides down here, if I close those, because those feed in next to this ash pan, this little handle here is actually a removable ash pan. It cannot come out unless the door's open because it bumps into the door. But there's a hollow chamber. So these side drafts feed under and up through the center of the false bottom, feeding the fire from underneath, which is always the most efficient way. The tops up here draw the air in to basically clean the glass and push it up and out the pipe, making the stove have an incredible draw. It works really, really well. Cooking on this thing is incredible. One thing I'll mention is I'm actually cooking just on the stove top. And what I mean by that is this portion, that circle, is actually removable. I'll show you guys real quick. Let's just move this stake off for just a second. Come down here to this fancy little tool. It is collapsible. This opens and then it packs down inside of itself. Right now we're just going to open it. So this is actually the exact same tool for the green stove, the pellet stove. It just happens to fit in the door. If I can get that in there right now with one hand. And that's what opens the door. So I can undo the clasp and open the door. This also fits into these little slots here. And then you just pick up the top. And you can put your pan directly over that hole, just like stoves back in the day. And the heat would go directly into your pan instead of it sitting on top of the stove. Now it does bring things up to a boil a little bit quicker, but realistically, the steel plating on the stove is so thick that it heats evenly. I mean, that steak is cooking on max right now beautifully. So the wood stove is working incredibly well. The tent, absolutely spacious. There is 2 stove jacks. There's one up there and the one that we're using up here. So the reason why there's 2 stove jacks is not only can you pick which side you want the stove on, but you can actually run 2 wood stoves in here at the same time. So if you had, I don't know, maybe 2 people sleeping in here and you're burning 1 stove and you didn't want to rearrange your sleeping area and one person would basically run the day and then you would run the night, basically splitting the load of feeding the wood stove possibly. Or if you had a different layout in the tent and you didn't want to move your stuff around, you basically put the stove on one side or the other. But basically, from what I see, is they made it to have 2 wood stoves to really get this tent rocking very, very hot. Now, personally, my thought on having 2 wood stoves inside of a tent is a little strange. I won't be doing that. That means twice as much wood prep, juggling between 2 wood stoves. To me, that's just not a good idea. It's a great option to have, and I think it's a good thing they put it in there just to give people an option. But realistically, if you're having troubles heating the tent, I can tell you right now, it's about -5 degrees Celsius out today, and with the door shut, this wood stove being elevated is actually heating the tent very nicely. I am sleeping on a cot tonight, so I'm going to be up with the heat, and hot air can go underneath as well. So I will be plenty warm, but if I were sleeping on the ground in this tent, you would definitely freeze. Absolutely. Just like most big hot tents. Unless you're right up against the wood stove, you're going to be cold down there. You do really want to be up off the ground. So this tent is very, very, very big. If I were to do an off-grid living scenario in this tent, I would get a really big stove. Like a 26-inch deep stove that I could just cut big logs and just feed it in, and that thing would burn all night. Me personally, that's what I would do. But this right now is working really, really well. I'm excited to see the tent glowing with all 4 sides of glass later on this evening. It's going to be really cool. So yeah, I'm just cooking up this steak for Boomer. He's been eating all day, so I decided to eat first. I haven't eaten all day. Got that done and out of the way. I do have snacks for later on as well. And right now, just sipping on a brew. The interesting thing, if I could reach this, the interesting thing with this particular brew is this was actually given to me in person from a subscriber on the channel. So we met, and that's actually his brother-in-law. Correct me if I'm wrong if you're watching this in the comment section. His brother-in-law owns a brewery over in Prince Edward Island, and this is his brewery. So I typically don't drink Pilsners. This is actually really good, and I don't know if it's because it's a Czech Pilsner, or maybe what I'm drinking is just not the greatest, but typically I drink stouts, porters, and IPAs. Pilsners I usually stay away from. That's actually pretty snappy. It's really good. I do enjoy it, so thank you for that. I gotta flip this steak really quick. Boomer will get mad at me if I cook it wrong, right? Let's see. Oh yeah. Man, that stove. It's doing its job, I'll tell you that. It's doing its job. Man, I'm excited for tonight. I'm very, very excited. So, I'm going to get back to filming my other video again. I always put you guys on pause, but it's only realistically once maybe 2 seconds. And then we advance another hour or 2 hours or so. Here comes Boomer right now, crawling in the tent, sniffing out a steak. So I'm going to get that cooled down for him. He's going to eat that up and then basically carry on with the evening. If you guys are interested in seeing the full length of these camping trips that I'm filming and you haven't yet discovered my other YouTube channel, the link is down in the description for the full cinematic experience. This channel is more of a vlog channel, talk, kind of run and gun with the camera. But if you guys are interested in a more cinematic, professional delivery of a camping experience, check out the link in the description to my main channel. So, time to feed my little dog. He's looking at me like he's really angry. Hello, sir. Would you like your steak? No, it's not up there. That's mine. Would you like your steak? It's not it either. Up here, look. It's too hot. It's too hot for you right now. You have to let it cool down. Deal? Okay, let's put it up here. Cool it down. Good? You're vibrating with excitement. All right. You're going to spin around and find a nice spot to sit. Here, why don't you sit on your pad? I don't know why you always do this. Here. Come sit down. Here. He does this all the time. He has the pad. He has the bed. I even went as far as putting in a partial floor in this tent, and you guys know how I feel about that. And what does he do? Steals the firewood and sits in the snow. Most of the time today, he's been sitting right there, staring at me from afar. Yep. Boomer the bully. All right, so Boomer's got his dry kibble in here. I do with my fork right over here. Yeah, so let me move this out of the way first. That up there. And he's got his kibble in here. And I like adding his steak to it. Got some of the juices down in there to mix in with it. He loves it. He eats snow off the tent. Like when he gets thirsty. So first of all, I should mention this. There is a little bit of a creek over here in the woods, and he's found it. And underneath the ice, it's still flowing. So he's been drinking out of that, and this is what he typically does. He'll find a lake, a stream, whatever. I could fill his water dish, and he's feral. He's feral. He just likes wild water. I don't know why. He'll drink his water, but if there's a fresh water source, he'll go for that first all day, which is good, you know, because some dogs won't. So good that he's doing that. But I like to get his food with a little bit of moisture in it. Does that make sense? Like the steak and the juice to mix in with his dog food while he's out here. And I monitor how much he's eating and how much he's drinking while he's out. Because he's kind of like a child where he gets excited and distracted very easily by doing things and having fun that he forgets to eat. Or forgets that, hey, I need to eat. He always eats. He always drinks. He just... He needs a little bit of supervision while he's out. Otherwise, he'll forget. And then, not a problem, because then, later, just like a child, when it's time to settle down, can I have a snack? Can I have a snack? And then he ends up eating too late. And then he's like, hey, I need to go outside. Can you open the door? And, yeah, it's just a repetitive cycle. So I pay very close attention to what he's eating, how much, and when. And that way it just kind of makes things a little more streamlined for me. So I know, like, hey, you need to go for the bathroom break, or hey, you need to go, you want a drink or whatever. So, yeah, let me sample this, Boomer. Oh, bud. Try that. Oh, yeah. Steak, dog food, a little bit of jerky in there too, actually. A couple pieces of jerky. Are you ready? Come over here by the stove. Alright, so while he's eating, I've got this pan with a little bit of baked beans baked on the bottom there. I do have a scrub pad in the van, but there's another way of doing this if you don't have a scrub pan. Take your pan over here. What can I do for you, sir? And then you come over here and you grab one of these little scrub brushes here. And you just scrub your pan with these spruce boughs. Not only does it work like a scour pad, but it will leave your pan smelling pine fresh. I like to kind of slosh that around in there. The snow will get any other little bits out of there. And then take this back inside. Down there for a second. Come over here. Hot water. Or warm water, I should say, right off the wood stove. And the important part is dump it right in front of your tent so the coyotes come say hi later. That is a clean pan. No more baked on food. So I didn't have to use a scrub pad or a cloth or anything like that. Just use a little spruce bough, little tiny one, and that is clean. Boomer is out there licking it, forgetting that he has food in here. There he is. Sir, you forgot your food. Oh, that was very pleasant. That was nice for you to share that with the world. Where are we going? Alright, so starting to cool off. I could feel the cold air really start to set in. And actually the clouds are rolling in right above. Oh, it's really not picking up on the camera. I have HDR turned on this too, so like it's cutting. Wait, if I angle it a certain way, the HDR will it'll show you the definition of the clouds up there. But right now, above that tree, I know it looks kind of like a blue sky. It's not. It's solid dark gray cloud right now. So it might actually snow again. I hope the van can get out of here tomorrow when it's time to go, because two-wheel drive, it's not very high off the ground, and well, the tires aren't the greatest. So we'll see. I mean, if not, I guess I'll just stay another day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, who knows. Yeah, okay, I'll see you guys a little later on. Alright guys, so it's basically nighttime right now, and got to do the chores before shutting the doors for the night. So in here I've got a pot full of really slushy snow. The reason why I go for slushy snow is because there's more water content in that than there is in just snow. Snow is a lot of air molecules. That's why it makes such a good insulator. That basically you could fill this pot full of snow, and to even get half a pot of water out of it, you'd have to fill this pot like 6 to 7, maybe even 8 times full of snow just to get half solid water. So I'm going around the outside of the tent, and right down here you guys will see all the water that is running off the tent from the heat. And even now it's still running water. All the snow up here is melting. It's all running down and going underneath this snow and forming this big slush layer. Now that is very, very heavy. It's dense, it's heavy. This light snow around here, it would probably take about 10 handfuls to equal what this weighs. So go for solid ice if you can, or slush. Now obviously this is disgusting, totally full of dirt and nastiness. Go for some of the cleaner stuff. Certainly not from over here where I've been cutting wood. But basically, loading it full, you guys will notice the pot is full of pine needles and all kinds of nasty debris. Use a coffee filter to clean that. So my coffee filter, wherever I put it, it's a good question. I don't know where I put it. Oh wait, I think it's, oh there it is, okay. Right up here in the net. So, coffee filter, I can literally take this, and this is what I've been doing, clicking it onto my kettle, and the kettle right now is full of water because I already did it. You guys can see, full of water. So basically take this coffee filter, click it on to the rim, just like you would making a cup of coffee, and instead of making a cup of coffee, just filtering all those particles of nastiness out of the pot into the kettle. And that way this has already been cleaned, it's already been boiled so it's sterile, and it's already been filtered so there's no nasty bits in there. So coffee filter, the reason why I landed on this specific one, packability, lightweight, and multi-use. I've got it up here in this gear loft so it can dry out all the hot airs up there. So I'm not sure if it's picking up on camera right now, but that chimney pipe is red hot. Let me turn this light off. Oh yeah. So that is red hot right up to the second section there. And that draft is a little kind of cocked to the side. It's basically wide open. This is a stainless steel pipe. It's not going to melt. Even a titanium pipe, it won't melt. But that'll show you how hot your stove is burning. And just kind of watch that if you think it's burning too hot. The reason why I'm mentioning that is this stove has plenty of distance from the stove to the stove jack. This stove jack up here is silicone impregnated sheet. It also has a fireproof gasket around there, a nice big rubber, not rubber, but a rubber-like material that is flame retardant and it won't melt. If this red section of pipe, remember it's red right up to here, so half of that is red. If this red section were going through or even near the side of the tent, it would melt the tent. It would also ruin your stove jack because these stove jacks are not designed to deal with that kind of temperature. So if your stove pipe is incredibly hot, right now I want it very, very hot because I'm warming up the tent, I'm melting this. I want really, really, really hot. And then once I'm done that, I'll damp it down and let it simmer down a little bit. But if that red pipe goes through your stove jack, you're in trouble. So if you don't have the clearance, do not run your pipe that hot. As you guys can see, that is ripping nice and hot. I've got a bunch of that softwood in there and one of those artificial logs in there. And still, you guys will notice, still holding right at the only 3.5 used. That big piece is still in there burning. So that is what's happening right now. Mr. Snowball there is getting all the nice wet snowballs all over my bed, so that's nice. Joke's on you because you have to sleep in there too. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this up and give you guys one more look outside actually, because it is getting very dark very quickly. Camera's not showing that, of course, but it is just frigid out here. Starting to cool off quite a bit. That night air and that cool breeze is just whipping through here. Some of these trees are starting to sway. None of the snow's falling off though, so that's good. I want to wake up like this. Nice winter wonderland. So we'll let this stove do its thing, and I will see you guys in the morning. Good morning, guys. It is minus 15 degrees Celsius with a wind chill out there this morning. It is freezing cold, so I just stepped outside for a bathroom break, just waking up. The entire tent is a frost cave. Total ice and frost in here. Freezing cold, as you guys can tell. We slept really warm in the sleeping bag, but I gotta tell ya, once that stove went out late in the night, it got very, very, very cold. Not that I noticed until I rolled over and realized, hey, there's no snow on the ground, and it's hard as a rock, frozen. So it did get quite soupy in here last night. It was a little wet, but it's since frozen in the very, very hard ground. So let's get this stove going. I definitely need a hot coffee. Oh, so cold. So toss that in there. That'll do its thing. I do have a kettle already full of water, and I put a pot up there with snow last night just to melt it down. That way I've got a pot and a kettle full of ice that I can just pop on top there, and we'll have instant hot water instead of doing the whole snow thing, cycling in water and whatnot. So I'll get this shut. Once that pipe starts to warm up with the heat, that'll start creating a draw with the stove, and it'll really start taking off. We've got all the vents open right now, so yeah, we'll let that do its thing. Get nice and warm. Alright, Boomer is a little bit happier now. He was just outside running in the snow. Face is soaking wet. He's got his sweater right there drying out. We've got the camera set up for this shot, so just filming up close footage of that. Just slit the stove, got the kettle on there, removed the top so it's directly on the flames. And this is really cool because you can actually feed the fire this way. You'll notice that there's really not a lot of smoke coming out. Even though the flames are jumping out of the stove, the smoke is still going up and out the pipe, which is very, very handy. Usually I don't like those, but this stove actually looks like it's doing really well with that. So coming over to Boomer's dog food dish slash water dish slash ice rink. Yeah, it's Boomer, you got a kibble popsicle, a kibblesicle. Would you like your kibblesicle? No? I'm gonna put it right here so it thaws out. So that is frozen solid. It got really cold last night. The kettle right now is even frozen. Oh, it's starting to thaw out now. You guys can see little shards of ice in there. So that'll thaw out. I left that, and I left this pot on the stove last night, just so it wouldn't freeze absolutely totally through, but it is starting to freeze. So that goes to show that you guys see the thickness of this plate right here. I can't touch it, but it is quite thick. The thickness of this stove actually retained a fair bit of heat last night, even after the fire went out, and obviously kept those pots from freezing totally solid. But yeah, it is a beautiful sunny day out there. The entire tent is just an ice cave, starting to melt out right now, which is going to make a horrible mess in here once it starts dripping and doing its thing. I can already see some snow over there starting to slide off the tent. Held up really well last night. I should mention there's only four tent pegs holding this entire tent down to the ground. The reason why is because the ground is absolutely frozen solid. I couldn't get them in. I'm not terribly worried because the snow skirt is completely frozen to the ground, and the tent itself weighs a fair bit as well, so that's actually helping. And here you guys can see we are dripping. The top's melting. It's dripping right where my finger is, right off on that seam. Drip, drip, drip. Yeah, this tent needs to be really fired up hot and dried out. So I'm gonna start morning coffee routine right here and start the day. All right, well, I've got my hot coffee made up here, steaming away, chilling out right here in front of the wood stove, and I gotta say, definitely cozy. What do you say, Steve? Back there with his toque still on. Just have the camera outside, get some outside shots there. Totally warm in here, totally warm. I'm shocked. Hold on one sec, hold on. It's hot, it's still hot. I gotta turn. My knees are getting burned from the stove, it's so hot. So, this tent is an 8-person dome tent. It is incredibly tall. I mean, it's like another 2 feet above my head standing up to the top of the roof. My head doesn't even hit the gear net, which is above. Okay, so this tent, 16 foot in diameter. I want to say like 10 feet tall. This wood stove is cranking out some heat. It is heating this tent really, really, really well. And it got cold last night. I believe it was minus 14, minus 15. I clocked on the thermometer early this morning. So very, very cold. Not crazy cold, but like cold enough that if you go outside, you're going to feel it. And cold enough to feel that, that cold if your stove is not sufficient enough to heat your space. Now, granted, I've only used half of this tent, not even joking. Literally, if you were to cut the tent down the middle, this half I've used, the other half I have not. So, saying that is very interesting, because if you were in a situation where you may be sharing a tent, maybe you're out on a camping trip, maybe you're out with someone that you don't even really know, or if you're out at a lodge, or like if an Airbnb place were to purchase these tents, just hear me out for a second. You could, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 doors to get into this tent. 2 stove jacks. So if you literally cut the tent down the middle, 1 stove on one side, 1 stove on the other side, like put up a separation wall. I don't mean actually cut the tent. Put a separation wall permanent in between. You would have 2 separate homes, 2 separate stoves, 2 separate bedrooms, 2 bits of privacy. So I think that is really interesting, and I would actually like to see this tent marketed like that, with a zip-in separator wall to separate. Because me, myself, I know when I go out camping with certain people, I like if I'm out with buddies and friends and whatnot, I like my own tent. I like my own privacy, my own area. I'm very meticulous. I have maybe just a tad bit of OCD. I like my things where I put them. That way I know where they are. I like my areas tidy, neat. If I want to come in and get changed and strip down naked, I want to come in, strip down, get changed. You know what I mean? So it's nice having your own space. And I know that if I had a separator wall there, even with like a little man door that you can like unzip and be like, hey, how's it going? I think that would be really, really beneficial, because then you could literally have your own tent, your own stove, your own bedroom, your own privacy. And I think marketing wise, you can market this tent in a lot of interesting scenarios that way. It's kind of like a duplex tent, really. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. I've only used half of this tent. Typically, I like smaller tents a lot more, just for the simple fact, less wood, less heat, easier to set up. I mean, I could pick up most backpacking tents one hand, move it, put it back down on the ground. This tent is big. I mean, you need 2 people, really. Should have had 2 people to set this up. I set this up by myself for the first time ever yesterday. And I'll tell you, it was not fun. It was difficult, but I got it done. And that was in a heavy snowfall too. So, yeah, loads of room in here. And there's all types of these panels. So right by the stovepipe, you guys can see that big V. That unzips and rolls up. That's a huge mesh window. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. So 2 per half of the tent. And then up here, there is a half moon vent. That's a kickstand vent. So you can unzip it and push the kickstand out, or pull it in, or you could just unzip the mesh or zip the solid panel. I'll give you guys a close look at that while we're talking about it, actually. So this bottom zip actually grants access right outside, and you can see the van parked right there. So I can reach in and collapse this and shut that flap by velcroing it to the tent totally if I want to. But right now, I've got that kickstand set out. Now, if it gets too hot in here, maybe it's spring, summer, maybe it's just too hot from the wood stove, I can unzip this solid panel and allow air to go in and out. And there are toggles to toggle these down. And let's say there's bugs or blowing snow, I can then zip the mesh shut, and there's still a lot of airflow, and I can actually feel a ton of airflow in there coming in, cold air. And you know, if I would have left that open last night, it probably would have solved a lot of my condensation issue. But sure, it would have blown in cold air. There's two of those. There's one there, one on the exact opposite side. These big V windows, I did not even unzip these yet. The zippers are on the outside. They have their own weather flap, and that is like, there's a lot of ice out there right now. So those roll up. So there's loads of door and window options in this tent, making it a really nice tent to essentially live inside of. And there are these gear nets down here. Way down by the pomaly, you guys can see a triangle little gear loft there. That can be detached. Right now there's one there, and there's 3 others around the tent, 2 per half of the tent. And then looking up, there's this very big gear net, and I mean big. Like, this is a very, very big net with a central hanging point way up there for a light or a lantern. So currently, this is the largest tent that Pomaly makes. They did a fantastic job with it. They have other dome tents, the X4, the X6, the X4 Pro, the X6 Pro, and this being the largest tent. Taking that technology and that know-how and that design on those dome tents and putting it into this Arctic dome tent, which essentially this is. These pole diameters, like your typical tent poles, like, I don't know, like 5 mil. This is like double. These are like the diameter of my thumb. These poles are huge. You are not hiking in with this tent. I think the pole weight of this, all the poles, was like 17 pounds just for the poles. They're super sturdy, super thick aluminum. Very, very, very strong exoskeleton on this. The material is a toughened flame retardant fabric. It's still going to melt if you get embers on it, but it's a tougher. It's not a canvas. It's like an Oxford kind of like ripstop material. It's durable. It's thick. Visit pomaly.com if you guys are interested in any of this. Check that out. That's where the stove and the tent's from. And I love the color. I love the color. It lets in such a nice little amber, warm glow in the morning with the sunshine. Very, very nice. Oh, and one other thing I will mention. I'm just looking over at the other side of the tent. You can actually unzip the entire window where the stove jack goes. I can't show you where the stove jack, the pipe's going through right now, but I'll show you where I've got my jacket hung so you guys can kind of understand what I'm saying. So I've just got my jacket hung off this toggle here. It's not in an area where this seam's actually going to cause any damage, so, and my jacket's downfill, so it's not very heavy. But this is the stove jack, so it's got this big rubber insert right over top of the flame retardant fabric. Very, very nice. This does open up to outside, so if I push on this, I can actually feel cold air rushing in. So this is just the flap. There's a big zipper here on the outside and a big zipper here, which rolls that fabric up, and right now it's covered in frost. But there is this big zip down here. So if you unzip that, that literally opens the entire tent up. And then again, you guys can see the zipper. Oh, there's snow blowing in everywhere. Weird, right? Snow in the wintertime. And now we're looking outside. And like I said, it is crisp and cold out there. Very, very cold. But I think this is a really cool option to have yet again another sunroof to open up during the daytime. And yeah, it just works really well. So we'll keep that zipped shut because we don't need that. But yeah, that's how those stove jacks work. They're really, really interestingly built. Very, very strong, very resilient. This rubber here is super strong. Cut on an oval on purpose, which I really like seeing in a lot of hot tents, because as the stovepipe goes through the stove jack on an angle, oh, slipping on ice, it closes that, right? So a lot of people think stove jacks actually need to be cut round. They don't. They actually need to be cut on an oval, depending on the angle of your tent. So that's working really well. Definitely Boomer approved. He likes it. His jacket is drying out right here. Get some Boomer fur stuck in there. Jeez, bud. And wood stove. I could probably toss in that little bit down there. That half log there, and that'll bring me down to like half. Well, I'm at half right now. So this stove, I mean, you guys can see right here, this is starting to melt. The stove is like 18 inches off the ground, and that down there is melting. And there is cold air coming in from there directly on the ground because that is partially unzipped, blowing in. 18 inches down. And that is melting. So that will tell you how much heat is coming out of that wood stove. Being that high up off the ground, it is still melting the ice down by my feet. So picture that stove down on the ground. And this stove does have foldable legs underneath of it. So you don't have to use the stand. I'm using the stand just because. But it does have foldable legs. I believe they're about 6 to 8 inches long. So that would put the stove much lower. I only brought so many sections of stovepipe with me. I do have more. The stove comes with a lot. But I have just enough that it works perfectly on the stand. Had I have known that I could have put it down lower, and it would have resonated a lot more heat, that's for sure. But yeah, I would have brought more pipe. But today, even having it up this high, I could take all the wood and store it underneath of there, which is what that's meant to do. But I wanted to see how much heat would go directly underneath. And as you guys can see, there's still ice and snow down there. That has not fully melted, and we're getting pelted. We're getting pelted with snow off the trees right now. Getting really windy out there. So this stove is throwing a ton of heat, like an absolute ton of heat. It's actually working really, really, really well. Surpassed what I thought it was going to do. I figured this tent was going to be way too big, way too tall. Huge footprint for that to heat, but that actually heats it no problem. So, sipping my coffee here, which is still really warm. Typically in a hot tent, coffee cools down quick, being that far away from the stove. Comes the wind again. So hopefully that is enough usable information for you guys that may have questions about hot tenting, types of tents, this particular tent, this particular stove, what I do, some of the challenges I've had to deal with. My shoes were frozen solid last night. Not solid, like they were soaking wet. They would have been frozen solid had I have not placed them on the table to get that heat. So there are challenges, certainly, both on the filmmaking aspect and the camping aspect too, because this camera back here, this tripod, those legs were actually frozen this morning. I couldn't adjust those legs, so I had to basically prop it next to the stove to get that heat. One leg was frozen so bad that I had to like hold it with my hand, frozen cold, just warming it up with my hand until I could actually adjust the leg. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to think about that happens challenge-wise, and I feel these kind of behind-the-scene videos and a little bit of gear talk, a little bit of struggle talk, really help paint the picture of what's really happening out here. Because yes, I am enjoying myself. Yes, I love it. But there are a lot of things that don't make it into the videos on Lone Wolf 902, my other channel. In the cinematic cuts, it doesn't make it in there, so it's nice to be able to talk and explain and give you guys a little bit of knowledge, I guess. Even right now, sitting here, yes, it's really warm in here. I can feel a cold draft on the back of my neck. The stove is starting to die down. I've got to get that other log tossed in there. It's resonating heat, but with the little air draft that's coming in through that hole up there and the bottom of the door unzipped, the reason why I got that unzipped is to let some air in to actually mitigate this condensation. Yeah, a little bit of information there as well. I don't want to unzip the half moons because that'll like really wash all my heat out of here. But the tent's not dripping anymore, so we're headed in the right direction of drying it out. But yeah, there's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of behind the scenes. Typically, when I go hiking, hot tenting, the camera has to go in my sleeping bag with me. Batteries. There's a lot of production. All these lights, they weigh quite a bit to carry all that stuff just for the camera. If I were going out hiking, just hiking, not filming anything, yeah, I'd absolutely ultralight it. I mean, I wouldn't need half the things that I bring, but a lot of things I bring are specifically for production, for lighting. Right now I've got 1, 2, 3 lights on in here, and it's broad daylight, and that sun is beating on the tent, lighting it up. I still need 3 powerful lights to film this right now at high quality. Mind you, I could crank the ISO up on the camera and the picture look horrible, grainy, and nasty. That's not what I'm about. I like production quality. So with this camera behind me, that camera likes a lot of light for really, really high 4K crispy production. And I run my cameras all in full manual. They have never been in automatic, ever. Full auto. So when I'm doing film, auto exposure, auto focus, I lock the focus. There's never any auto focus in and out like you see on some other channels. I don't like it. And then I film in like the dullest format ever. So then when I get home, all my raw images are crisp and just like really, really sharp, really, really vibrant to work with. And then I add my saturation, my vibrance, my sharpness, my clarity, adjust the exposure, highlights, all that for every single clip. And typically there's about 200 to 250 clips on a regular outing on my other channel. So yeah, let's paint another picture of how much work goes into those videos. So it's nice to relax here on this channel. There's still a lot of work that goes into these videos, but it's much more relaxed. I can hold the camera instead of getting up, moving it every 5 seconds. So give you guys a look. We are down to coals. Let that be no joke. It is absolutely throwing a ton of heat. Red hot coals. But I am going to throw in another log to kick up the heat again. And the reason for that is I've got to get this tent taken down. Not going to be fun. So what I'm going to do is pack everything up inside of the tent. Get it into the van, so it's just the tent, just the wood stove. Get it ripping hot. That'll really help dry out the fabric. Unfortunately, the snow's still landing on it from the tree, so hopefully that'll stop. There's 4 pegs holding this tent down. It's not going to be hard to get those out. So once I can detach the poles and drop it, I'm basically going to have to try and kick all the ice off the skirt, get that off, and pray that I can get it back into the bag, which is way over there. Pray that I can get it back in the bag and zipped up. If not, it's going to be a gigantic ball being thrown in the van. Crank the diesel heater, thaw it out, get it to a point where I can get it in the bag nice and dry for permanent storage. If not, this is going to have to go in a heated environment to be dried out. So that's all I've got for this video. Yeah, going to be kicking it inside and heat this tent up and get it packed away. So check the links in the description if you guys are interested in more content, and thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.